Maybe I'll make celeb status one of these days.
Right?
One of these days. And welcome to another episode of the Riley Black Project with Crystal and John.
Hey.
And we have a special guest today, and repeat guest.
Back at it.
That's Heather from LoBo Designs. What's going on?
What's up?
You're gonna phase me out.
I mean, it's coming.
It's only a matter of
I think Crystal told you last episode. I can't do it weekly, so we have to keep you around at least for that.
Right.
Well, so I'll just introduce.
You can be like a filler.
Right. I'll introduce today's podcast, and then I'll just sit here and watch. So today we're talking about laser hacks.
Yes. We have some good ones.
You have some good ones?
Yeah, we have some really good ones.
Okay. Well, let's jump into it.
Get right into it.
What's one of the laser hacks?
I think that my first laser hack that I would talk about always would be 3M and all of the tips that come along with using 3M adhesive on the back of your project. My first tip is always to cut a shape around your text that you can use as a jig for placement, and that you can also use to weed the back of your text that you're cutting out, or the shapes that you're cutting out, so that you can apply everything at one time. That's probably going to sound very confusing over the phone, right?
Well,
Crystal?
It does, but so explaining it a little bit more. So when you cut, so say I'm cutting out the sentence, I love you. So there's spaces, it's separate words, whatever. But maybe it's like a big I love you, and you don't want to line that all up again. Mm-hmm. And so then you'll cut like a rectangle around I love you. And you'll apply the 3M. Then you cut out, I love you, so that you're only applying 3M to where you actually need it, so that you're not applying extra, because the stuff is, it's expensive. It's worth it, but it's expensive. So you don't want to waste too much of it. So then you cut the rectangle. So you cut the rectangle around it, and then you cut the word after you apply the 3M. And then you tape the front side. So the side that doesn't have 3M, the front of your sign. Then you remove the 3M just from the words.
Right.
And then the backing, like the 3M backing.
The 3M backing. And you just remove it from the words. You leave it on, obviously, the other stuff, because you don't want that stuff to stick. And then you line up your rectangle, square, whatever on your sign. And now you place it all in one stop.
Right. So
you've basically glued everything in one fell swoop.
So you take the backing off. Yeah, you take the backing off of the word, and then when you're positioning a rectangle, not necessarily individual
exactly letters. And so you just need to center that rectangle, right. And then now you're good. Now the other way that I do it with 3M, if it's like a bunch of pieces and maybe that would cause too much waste, then I do, this is another hack, so not necessarily 3M related, but it can be. I do what's called an internal offset. And so it does a line inside the letters. Mm-hmm. And I do an internal offset of 0.010. Because if you do an offset the same size as the letters, you'll see it once you place those letters. Because of kerf.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because the laser removes a tiny bit of material around what you cut out. And if you do that score line, if you don't do the score line smaller than what you're actually placing, you'll see it after you apply stuff. So that's kind of like a extended hack on that one, of where if it's going to use up too much material, and I can blob everything together and nest it within each other, then I'll have less waste, but then I have to apply each one.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes more work. So when I do, I know I get a lot of questions on don't you have waste when you're doing the 3M cutouts the way that you do them? Don't you have a lot of waste when you cover your entire sheets with 3M? I also purchased MDF that already has 3M on the back of it, where I do have scraps that I'm throwing 3M out, but the amount of time that I save,
right?
I'm okay with throwing that $1 bill in the trash.
Exactly, because a lot of times it's really only, especially with MDF or something like that, it costs you $1 or $2. Yeah. But it may save you 30 minutes in applying all of those stupid little letters or words or whatever that you're applying on there. So in something like that, where if it's a bunch of little pieces, just waste a little bit of material for the time saving that you're
Save
going to
yourself
get.
the headache.
And then depending, I mean, you don't necessarily have to waste it, because if you can get creative with it too, again, depending on how far you want to stretch your material, because that extra material won't have anything like on it. It'll be empty space. So you could figure out a way to make like a layered keychain, or
Right,
like you could use that material for something. You just got to get creative in what you're using it for, because it's going to be dead space. It's not going to be ruined, but it just depends on, is that worth your time as well? Is this something that you have a market for? Do I have a market for layered keychains, and it's worth the time in using those scraps? Or is it
And
just
if
better
not,
for me
you
to
can
toss
sell
them?
your scraps.
Yeah, a lot of people love scraps.
Really?
People that
Yeah.
make like stud earrings.
I'm
they
tempted to do
love
it with those
scraps.
huge stacks. I have 2 or 3 huge stacks of scraps underneath my shipping table.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I hate wood now. And so now I'm kind of just tempted to like pack them up in a bunch of those game boxes and be like, hey, $2 or $5 for this box plus shipping, and these scraps are all yours.
Right.
And I mean, as long as they as long as they don't mind, there might be a couple penis cutouts. But
It's like a mystery box.
right, totally. So I mean, most of them are going to be unstained.
It's a dick in a box.
But oh my god, that was so
Sorry.
loud.
Oh man, she's gonna wake up our kid.
Right? Oh man, that was something total, like, what do you call it? Tangent. So last night I jumped on John's
My podcast with my best friend.
his best friend Keith. And
The Keith and John show.
we were getting ready to record, and like we're all set up. We're not recording yet, but we're all like testing sound.
He's on the line.
Whatever, yeah.
We're about to record.
Ready to go.
And then the
all
door
of a sudden
opens.
we hear JR's bedroom door open, and we're like, oh shit. And so then we instantly go silent, and Keith is like confused on what's going on. So we're like whispering, because we feel like we're about to get busted. He's gonna walk out here, see all these microphones, and be like, what are you guys doing? And so he's
gonna want to play with them.
Exactly. I want to play. I want to stay up. I don't want to go sleep. We were sure he was totally gonna ruin any podcast recording.
It's one of those like nobody move and he won't see us.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what we froze, and we
looked at the
quiet,
hallway.
and we looked at each other, and we just kept looking at the hallway to see if he was coming. And then we hear the bathroom light turn on, and we're like, oh. And then we wait.
This 3-year-old pees, turns off the light, goes back into his room, and goes to sleep. Mind you, he doesn't flush or wash his hands.
I know he skipped a couple steps, but
Hey,
he
he's
went
3
back
years
in
old.
his room.
And went
We
to
were
bed.
both like, is he coming out here? Do you think he's gonna come out here? I wonder if he's gonna go back in his room.
I thought he was
like,
totally coming out here because he sees the light on in the living
Right.
room, and he's like, "Oh, what's going on out there?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Nope.
all of a
He was
sudden,
probably like, screw you guys, I'm tired.
right?
Probably.
He goes back in there, closes the door. I'm looking at his camera, and sure enough, he goes and lays right back in his bed and like,
He's like, "I got
leg
school
up and
tomorrow."
everything. And he, we were like, what?
Yeah.
We've been holding this police uniform from him for like a couple days because he hasn't really been listening that well. And we kept telling him like, you can get it if you listen today, and then he wouldn't, and then so we'd extend it another day. And then when
Totally
he did
earned
that
it
last
last
night,
night.
we were like, he got home from school today, and we're like, guess what you get because you're a really good boy, and you went to the bathroom, and you went
Eyeballs
back to your room,
immediately
went
went
straight up to
it.
where it was, like hiding on the shelf, like way up high, and he was like, police uniform. He's like, but I can't reach it. I'm not tall. It was super cute. But anyway, I had to share that because it was,
That's
we were
great.
both like, oh my God. And as you know, with a 3-year-old potty training or potty trained,
Well,
they're
she's got,
trained,
like-
but
He's
still,
got like a 5-year-old.
well, I mean, he's the size of a 5-year-old, but
Man.
anyway, back to the laser hacks. But it was very proud
number 2.
parent moment.
I'm gonna do the hacks like that. Hack number 2.
But it's like 3.5 by now, but that's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, it just makes him
Next
feel
hack.
involved.
Next hack.
I just crushed his dreams.
Talked about. I mean, I think everybody. Not, I wouldn't say everybody listening, but I would say most know that my 3M obsession is real.
Well, so your 3M obsession I mean,
is the cause of your 3M.
it is. And so, like, I wanted it, but I was like, of course, with everything new to laser, a lot of times we're scared of it, and we're scared of it for no reason. And this one actually had a valid reason, because it was expensive. And so when you're first starting out, when they tell you that a roll of 3M adhesive is $175,
yeah.
$200, you're like, whoa, I ain't got that kind of money. Because sometimes you don't. Again, just starting out, you may not have that much extra money to spend on one thing.
And if you do, you're a little bit leery about blowing that on a roll of adhesive.
Exactly. And so I was scared to try it for the longest time, and then you kept telling me how amazing it was, and I was like, okay, let me finally try it. Well, so then you finally get the courage to buy it. But then when you buy it, it still takes you a while to use it. And then
Which was so odd to me, because
right.
you used veneer a lot, and I'm like,
I know.
You use 3M. Like,
thing.
why are you so afraid of it?
Because it
was just the applying it yourself.
Yeah. The anxiety of I'm gonna waste money, or I'm gonna screw this up, or whatever. So yeah, I finally used it because you're like, just do it, and I'm like, okay, fine. And yeah, it's life changing. I don't use glue.
Great.
Unless I had to use glue the other day because my 3M had actually failed me. And so I actually had to go get glue, and I was like, this sucks. First of all, where is my glue?
If I had to use glue on anything, I would quit.
I was so mad. I had to use the glue, and then it just barely hazed my acrylic, and I was, again, pissed off that I had to use glue, because now I'm trying to correct the tiny bit of hazing. Thankfully I did. It was black, and it was easy, it was a tiny, like, something nobody else would have noticed but me, but I was able to fix it with, like, a tiny little, like, dot of a black marker. But still, I was pissed that I actually had to use glue, because I just absolutely love 3M so much.
Yeah, we don't use glue.
Total 3M snob.
Okay. Should we give a shout out to where we get our 3M?
Yes, there's a few places we get it now. So you go ahead with where you get it, and I'll share mine too.
So my actual sheets, most of my rolls and things like that are 467 MP, 468 MP, or 300 LSE.
Same.
I purchased almost all of my 3M from Joseph Tabby he is the Adhesive Ninja. If you're joining Facebook groups, you would want to join the...
That's his, like, it's his name, like, now, yeah,
business,
pretty much.
I guess.
Adhesive Ninja.
But he does everything
cool.
for nonprofit. So he started out with, like, an upcycling program from the plant that he works at in New Hampshire, and he was literally dumpster diving for 3M scraps and selling them for profit to, like, have local charity events in his city and donate to local animal shelters and stuff like that. So I was totally on board with his cause when he first
Well, then the demand was so high for... Yes. Because
you couldn't get it. It was
so limited.
He would swoop in, and then he would swoop out.
Oh, I used to get so pissed. I love him, but I used to get so mad because, like, you had to be quick. You had to do it within like 2 seconds, and then
especially for dream rolls.
Yeah. So, and what's a dream roll, by the way?
The dream rolls are like the 500-foot, 4-inch wide.
Yeah, they're perfect.
Just dream rolls.
Yeah, the 4-inch shape is so perfect, especially when you just need something smaller, when you don't want the full 12-inch sheet or 12-inch roll. The 12-inch rolls are really annoying unless
I love covering the 12-inch roll.
Well, unless you're covering the whole sheet, because otherwise, then you have all these little scraps that don't have a backing that you then either have to, apply to, like, the parchment paper or whatever, or another piece of, like, the other side of 3M. But anyway, so now he finally sells it. I think actually selling it not just for the nonprofit, but he's great, and he has a Facebook group, and I think it's literally called Adhesive Ninja, right?
Yeah. It is. And he sells the 468 MP in rolls now. Yeah. The thicker, the 5 mil adhesive, which is super cool.
And so then the other person who now is a recent new seller of 3M sheets is Amanda, our acrylic dealer with Cerulean
Our friend Amanda.
So she sells it as well. So it's perfect if, like, you just need, like, oh, I'm ordering these 2 sheets of acrylic, or 15 to 20, like Heather and then you're like, oh, I could really use a 12-inch sheet of acrylic or sheet of adhesive for this project or whatever that I'm doing. So she's another one. And then the third person that I like to use is Ro, R-O, Berglund, Berglund. And she's in most of the Glowforge groups, the GUG, GUG, that one with the laser. She's in all those. And I just order it through PM for her when I need something. So she became my go-to when I was never quick enough for Joseph Tabby's. And then Amanda wasn't selling it yet either. So those are the three people that I get it from the most. I've hoarded so much.
Oh, sorry, you go.
No, you're fine. I've hoarded so much from the three of them that I won't need any for a really long time. Probably.
Yeah, I don't ever need 3M again. Probably.
You don't. Her stash is absolutely ridiculous, like everything. But and for the people who listen to your episode and John doesn't know you did a destashing of your hoard.
What? They came and cleaned you out?
No,
they're in the process.
Yeah, she sold a lot of her.
Oh wow!
Her laser stuff.
I sold like $2,000 worth of crap.
Uh-oh. That means the hoard is going to be real because now she sold it, so she saw profit.
So now she bought a huge fancy trampoline for her backyard.
Oh, you got a trampoline?
And I think I'm trading the Land Rover into.
Of course you are.
Just because
she's one of those who doesn't keep a car for longer than like 2 or 3 years.
So what are you getting?
Probably a newer one.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'll get a Land Rover again. I hate capital HATE, the operating system in my car. So I won't ever get a Land Rover again. Okay. But
is there anything you're looking at? You got your eye on?
I'm looking at this is going to sound crazy, but the Kia Stinger, the GT2.
Oh.
Have you seen it yet? The 2022? Oh my gosh. I'll send you a picture later.
I don't want to talk about
it for too long.
John's already
John,
look
at the ceramic silver, black interior. Kia Stinger 2022 GT2. My friend is the GM at one of the local dealers.
Which is like the most dangerous.
It's the worst
that does look nice.
I want to see.
It's pretty, right?
I mean, I don't see it in the color you're talking about, but I do see. Oh, you know what?
It's like a matte gray.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a sedan.
Crystal, it's like Parisian gray by Home Decor.
Ooh.
I think it's this one.
I love that gray. Ooh.
Is that the gray?
Okay, that's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, focus. Now we got to get to
we're reeling it back in.
There's this Instagram chick, that Supercar Blondie. I think she did a review on this one, and it was pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, back. Next half.
So the other thing that I was going to say is 3M. When I mentioned the MDF that I get that's already backed with 3M. I get that also from a GUG, Jason Wilding, and I believe his wife's name is Ashley. Please, if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I get Wilding Woodworks on Etsy, WILDING Woodworks on Etsy. They have 20-inch sheets or 23-inch sheets of 3M backed MDF, and their MDF is wonderful for paint and everything. So
yeah, it's totally worth the cost of not having to apply it yourself, because I've tried and lining it up without bubbles is real annoying. So I'll pay that extra $1 or whatever it is for them to do it. Like I'm never doing that again because it sucked. I did that for that one paint kit that I offered for Christmas, and I backed it myself, and I was like, screw this.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Unless you do it often. It's not fun.
So I'll share one, and that's cardboard templates. So it's similar to the 3M hack. If you're super frugal and you don't want to do like the whole sheet like Heather does sometimes for signs, you can use, and I get like sheets of cardboard from Amazon if you don't already have like a ton of Amazon boxes like Heather, and me. But I like the sheets just because they're cleaner and I don't have to like break down a box. And so I get the sheets, and I use the sheets for templates, and also for templates for me to give the customer. So like a nursery sign, you remember that Luna Amore sign that I did in the white acrylic? It was that girl, it was a nursery sign, and it was in white acrylic, and it had like a moon and a couple stars. And so I had made the design for her, but in order for her to be able to like duplicate the design I made in the white acrylic on her wall, I wanted to give her a template so that she could apply it, on her wall the way that I had designed it. Because, I mean, although it was in script font, the L and the UNA were separate. And it's not super easy to line those up because you don't know, does the L go like down a little
always
bit?
Looks off unless you have some kind of a jig.
Exactly. And so I use the cardboard template for sending to the customer so that they can, use painter's tape up the cardboard template on their wall, and now they know exactly where their nursery sign or their decor goes on the wall. And it's a lot cheaper than obviously because then I could
giving them like the full sheet.
Exactly, because it would have taken me, I remember when I first designed it, if I did it all out of acrylic and just gave her the extra pieces of acrylic, for one, it would have been super expensive to ship because acrylic is heavy, and it would have been like
so heavy,
3 or 4 sheets of acrylic. Well, doing it this way, I think I only used like 1.5 or maybe 2. So I used half of the acrylic, and she got the cardboard template that also actually added some extra padding in the shipping and the packaging. So I use cardboard templates for that.
We should, just a side note, if we're mentioning anything we're mentioning, we could probably add, do you want to do like a post maybe in your group of, we can add links or something like that for the things that we mentioned.
Totally. And I'll include like links to like the cardboard sheets that I get, and in the Riley Black Project Facebook page. We'll give some links and like an actual list of the hacks there. That's a good idea.
So in my head, I'm like, if this is a YouTube video, there would be like little bubbles popping up.
Right.
Everybody like, go here, click here.
Click here.
Link in the description.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So the
like and subscribe.
Right.
No, but really, like and subscribe.
No, really. Yeah, and review.
While you're there.
And share with a friend.
FYI.
Right. And then another...
We only accept 5 stars, though.
Exactly. Don't be a 4-star. We'll talk about that later. So test cutting on cardboard is awesome, too. So I'm trying to get more in the habit of testing it on cardboard first to see like, okay, is this the size I think it is? Because, you can only like measure with a ruler so much, and it's still like, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, 2.5 inches is great. And then you look and you're like, oh no, that's either way smaller or way bigger than I thought it was going to be. So test cutting it on cardboard. And then it also shows you if there's any like weak spots or, thinner spots that you think that are a little bit thinner than you thought that they would be. And then you can make those adjustments without actually wasting, your stained wood or your fancy specialty acrylic or whatever. So I did those on my Easter tags, and it helped me see where I needed to like thicken them up a little bit and actually make them a little bit smaller because I made them too big when I first did them. So
that was what happened with my Easter earrings, but the opposite. Remember I cut those on cardboard, and I was like, wow, these are thin. So I wound up bumping up the stroke on those before I actually cut them in acrylic.
Exactly.
This is probably a good time to mention your hack to cut the extra.
The dots of the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's something you figure out early on when you're cutting a sign, is that the laser the crumb tray likes to eat the dots of the eyes.
I can see that.
Little
They're pretty
guys.
small.
Yeah. And so even if it's a pretty big
and apostrophes.
word. So what I do is I always cut at least 3 of like that dot of the eye. So like if there's one dot of the I in like that sentence, or like I just did a cake topper and it was 13 and there was one dot of the I, and I only cut 2, I lost both of them.
Oh.
So I had to cut it again, and so I cut 3 that time. Again, it was on my little 3M template, so it was no extra material that I'm wasting because it was already, I could fit 3 dots in the little square quite easily. So I cut 3 more, and I still lost 1, but then I ended up coming away with 2. So basically I had cut 5 dots of the eyes, and I only kept 2. Yeah. Wow. So and I kind of like stagger them, because the crumb tray, has like, if you line them up like perfectly in like a line, either straight up and down or straight across, you could potentially lose all of them if you hit the right, if you hit the holes right. So I kind of like stagger them like on purpose so that hopefully one of them is, backed by the metal part of the crumb tray.
Just like a honeycomb, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so then the other thing I do too is when there's a bunch of pieces, I use painter's tape, and I put the painter's tape across the cutouts, and I take it out in one piece. And that's how you also hopefully don't lose more dots of the eyes, because again, you'll go to pick it up and then you'll bump it, and now you just bumped pieces into the crumb tray. So yeah, extra dots of the eyes, or extra, like you said, apostrophes, commas, that kind of stuff.
So my favorite is Gorilla Tape.
And it has to be the black Gorilla Tape.
It has to be the black. Has to be
Why?
like the heavy duty black Gorilla Tape.
The other ones don't work. Oh. Yeah. I tried like getting the clear Gorilla Tape. I was like, no, this is better. Then I can see it. And it didn't work at all.
Not even close. Yeah. Nope. Has to be the black one. And it has to be Gorilla brand. Actually, I haven't really tried it, so I can't vouch that it only must be Gorilla brand.
I've tried others personally.
And they stink?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel
because
like
I ran out.
I would never wander off. It's been so faithful.
Just stick with it because it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Brand loyalty. It's been so faithful. I'm just gonna stay here.
Yeah, but it doesn't. So I will say that it doesn't always work with people. I personally don't love Gorilla Tape for weeding acrylic.
Yeah, it's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder. Acrylic is a lot dustier, so you have a lot. You have to get all the dust off of it first.
Well,
so
and
I
the masking
use
just
a
sticks
microfiber.
better.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
and so I use a microfiber cloth to get as much of the dust off of the acrylic as I can, but still it's more of you can't do a slow peel. I'm in my
right.
You can't see me, but in my hand I'm quickly ripping right. Like you would rip a Band-Aid off.
Yes. Well,
that's
so
how you
one
have
thing.
To weed acrylic.
So one thing you have to be careful of with the Gorilla Tape hack is if you do have an engraving with a lot of on wood. It doesn't happen on acrylic. If you have an engraving with a lot of small insides of the E, or
it'll pull them right off.
It'll pull that off because it's plywood.
Leave a hole.
Yes, yep. It's plywood, and so you have to be careful. I would
to not go over it twice. It'll take the masking off, but then if you touch it again, it'll rip that center piece.
Yeah, and then you can notice because the color looks different. And so you definitely need to be a little careful when you're doing those types.
But there are other options.
So the other one that I like, especially for acrylic. Heather doesn't like this one, but I love it. And I was scared of it at first, but it's those plastic razor blades. And you literally just, and it's perfect because it gets right underneath the masking, and so it comes off real easy. But you do need to be careful. You don't want to go too aggressive because acrylic does scratch easy, which is the it was the main reason I didn't try it for the longest time, was because I was scared to scratch. But as long as you don't go too aggressive and you're paying attention to the razor blade and it's not jagged, or because it's plastic, so it easily kind of get some dents, and then you just Gorilla Tape, you don't want to go over it a ton of times because then you're more likely to get a scratch. But I love that, especially for weeding my keychains, the smaller pieces, because then I just kind of swipe over it once with the plastic razor blade. And
so have you tried soaking yet?
I have, and it didn't work well for me the couple times I tried it, but that was
How long did you soak it for?
Yeah, that was early on when I was first working with acrylic, and I don't know that I soaked it in warm enough water, and I don't know that I added soap because soap helps as
Yeah.
well. So
And the
warm
time
soapy
helps.
water.
So with that last round of keychains I just did for that fundraiser for my coworker,
And that stuff came off. I saw your video. The stuff came off super easy.
lightning fast, but I soaked that shit overnight. Like
Ah.
I put it in hot water. At first I was nervous. I was nervous about soaking with hot water with
too
acrylic,
hot.
especially with 1/8 because I thought it was going to work.
Right.
But I was like, whatever, I'm chancing it. These need to get weeded. I'm definitely not weeding 85 keychains.
Right.
Like, it's
Well,
just not
my
happening.
first order of keychain, the order I tried it on, was those 200 keychains that I made for my nail lady. And it didn't work for me. But
they have to soak forever because the next day when I made that next round, I was like, I felt, you know how we are, like I wanted to donate everything I possibly could. I'm like, this job only takes 40 minutes.
Right.
I have all day. I can run as many as possible, but I'm like, I don't have enough time to weed them. And in order to weed them with soaking, it literally did take an overnight, putting them in like the hottest water I could and just letting them sit in like really soapy hot water until the next morning. And it rubbed right off. Like I literally was like, why did I wait so long to do this?
Well, so
I spent so many days of my life eating keychains.
Well, so another hack that kind of goes on to that one.
Does the amount of soap matter?
I only
how much
put
did you
probably
use?
like a little, just like a
squirt?
one pump. Just one pump.
And what kind of soap?
Ours is palm olive.
Okay.
Regular dish soap.
So another kind of hack that kind of goes with that, one being acrylic and dish soap, which again, this is not one that I've perfected yet. But you can actually remove the masking before your job, before you engrave, before you cut. And most people suggest Dawn dish soap, and I tried another brand and it didn't work. So I don't know, one, if it wasn't like thick enough or it wasn't the right brand and consistency. But you take those square foam brushes and you wipe on a thin layer of dish soap onto your acrylic on both sides. And or some people actually do it on one side and then use another laser hack for the other side, for the side that doesn't have engraving, where it'll just be one piece. But anyway, so you can either do one side or you can do both, and it doesn't even have to like dry completely, I've heard as well. And so then you cover both sides, and then you just go straight into your engraving and your cutting. And I don't know if it was my settings, the dish soap. I haven't perfected that yet, but a ton of people in the laser community like live by the dish soap hack. Because then you have to just rinse it off, and there's no masking to remove because you've already removed it before the job. So that's one I want to try again too, and kind of like perfect, especially for situations like you were just saying, where you're donating 100 keychains and you want to make sure that you're not spending 2 days of your time for something you're not getting paid for, but you still want to give something, towards the cause or whatever.
Yeah, like I just would have rather spent, like, it's not that I didn't want to spend money, but it's like their time is better spent weeding.
Well, and
like, I don't think I'll
just
ever not soak my keychains again now that I've waited 2 years.
Right. Exactly. Well, and then but then it could also potentially mean that you can make more. Like instead of, I only have time to make 50 keychains because it's going to take me X amount of hours.
I told them to attach I was like, if you attach your own hardware and you help me weed, we can really bang these out.
That's what I told my nail lady. I was like, here's one price for you attaching your own hardware, and here's another price for me attaching it. And it was like 2 or 3 times the price because attaching those jump rings
nobody really
sucks.
understands how much work that is. Exactly.
Well, and now I have those keychain thingies. I think that is a laser
be
hack
a huge time saver for that stuff. Yeah,
because so you know how the
Crystal's
team
a wholesaler
Torian,
now. You didn't hear?
I am. I'm going to be. You saw me counting
I
them
saw
all
her
today.
weighing stuff out in the room, and I was like, I don't know if that's still considered.
We don't run these things past you, John.
I'm
He
like,
goes,
I don't know.
Don't take that scale out of the house.
Yeah, if you get pulled over and that scale's in
Yeah.
your car, you get it's trafficking
But
with intent to sell.
I
They're
mean,
so
you're-
awesome
with
because
where you are.
Yeah. If you've ever put on keychains and jump rings onto 100+ keychains, you'll understand how life-changing these things are. Like the Torian keychains I made, they were a similar thing, but those ones work better for 1/4-inch material. The ones I'm buying and going to be selling only really work for 1/8 inch. So kind of sucks because I would love if they worked for the thicker stuff. But anyway, you literally just clasp them instead of having to twist open a jump ring, put on the keychain hardware, put on the keychain, and then close the jump ring. And you do that 150 times, and you're like,
I remember
F
doing
this.
that a lot.
Oh yeah, he's been my applier,
An employee.
a couple times, unpaid.
No, employees get paid. I've been the slave.
Intern.
There you go.
Intern, slave, whatever you want to call it.
Shut up. Yeah, so that one is another, I think, a hack. Just time savers, because they save so much time and they save, like, your fingers. And again, like, when I was donating those keychains, I'm like, I need something. Okay, maybe it doesn't look as amazing as a jump ring and whatever it does, but people who are buying this keychain aren't going to care, what that little attachment looks like because, it's going towards a good cause. So those things are great. So my next one on my list is staining pens or acrylic paint pens for painting small pieces and or touch up. That one doesn't really need much explanation, but like I got them. I forget the first project I was using them on. So like if you have kind of, my together sign that has all the hands.
Yep.
So if I'm making one of those, it does not make sense for me to stain the board or paint the board those 6 or 7 different colors that it was. It will make more sense for me to cut out 7 hands and use my acrylic paint pens and color them, the color that I need them to be. Same with staining. The staining pens kind of work great for that. If it's like a little accent piece and you're only doing one, it's super great for that. Unless, if you're doing 50 of something, then yeah, do the whole sheet. But I love the staining pens or the paint pens for those kind of things.
I don't do much coloring of anything.
I don't either. They helped when I did. You know what I mean? Oh, and your teacher file.
Yeah.
They would be perfect for those. That. Yeah, because
my only project I've done in color.
Right. It was super colorful and it had a bunch of like smaller accent pieces. For me. Yeah. But the paint pens were great for that because then you didn't have to get out a bunch of acrylic paint and clean your brush in between and all that yuckiness.
And that was another, this isn't really a hack, but that was a cute project I took with the whiteboard. I covered it in that white chalk paint, and then we realized that you can use crayons or Crayola markers or pretty much any kind of drawing medium on white chalk paint, and it stays. Right. So you don't have to mail them paint. Like, that was our biggest concern, is that, like, if we do DIY kits, like, do we have to include paint?
Right.
Can we just be like,
I did not want to. Well, just the mess of measuring it out and then shipping paint and hoping that it doesn't make a mess. And
like options.
I'm a parent who unfortunately doesn't love. I hope he does the painting at school because then when he wants to do it at home, then I'm like, oh, it's, and so when, like, if I can paint the DIY kit in that white chalk paint, then they can use markers or crayons or whatever they have. And markers or crayons, well, markers are questionable, but the crayons are definitely a lot less messy or scary. They're not going to go too far with that, hopefully.
Right.
So one place that we really like is the Farmhouse sign kits from Craft Deals. They are amazing.
I think they have Farmhouse.
Oh, they have a new site now.
or
Yeah, so we'll have to
too,
put that on the Facebook page, the new site, because they actually have a site specifically for those kits now. But they're super great. They have,
and they run sales a lot.
So many sizes too. Yeah, the sales are great. And then they have, they're as small as like 6x6, and then they go up to like, 12x24, or I think even bigger. But they have tons of sizes.
Yeah, they go up to 24x36 or 36x36, something like that. But they definitely go up to at least 24x36.
And so then you don't have to worry. The sign comes with, you can either choose birch backing or MDF backing. And it's obviously paintable, so you paint it whatever, color you want. And then it comes with the
frame.
Yeah, it comes with the frame with the, like, what is that mitered, like, piece in the middle.
So you can pick either mitered or standard, like the flat cut or the diagonal.
Well, but what's that groove called? Is it just the groove? The groove where the actual backing like fits in. Because because when we were making them myself, you would get the backer, and then we would use they're called furring strips, but then we didn't have any fancy tool to make that groove. So trying to like staple it,
make
or
it all line up,
nail it all, it was such a pain.
I do also like how Craft Deals, they'll tell you exact measurements. So like if I'm designing for one of their signs, like it'll say like so it'll be like a 16x16 sign, but they'll tell you that your like working area is 14.5 around, so that like don't make a 16x16
right,
sign.
It's not gonna fit.
It's not gonna fit on this sign here.
Right. And then kind of an extension of that one, of like the sign backing hacks, was so Hobby Lobby will have huge sales every once in a while, anywhere from like 50% off to 70% off. Like they're, the signs that are left over from seasons, or, Christmas was one huge one. And so all of their Christmas signs that didn't sell, they're 70% off afterwards. Well, you can get those as long as the frame looks cool and it's a paintable surface. I got a bunch of super cheap Christmas signs that for $5 for the whole like frame and everything, and it was just $5, and I painted over it, and then I used that for a whole new sign. So I painted over it in like white or black or whatever, and then I attached my words to the frame, and now it's a new frame, and it only cost me like $5. And one of them had like super cool like what do you call it? Like details, I guess. Definitely different than the Craft Deals where it's just the plain edging. This had like a how do you describe it? It's kind of like the railings on stairs. How it had like detail. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one of the signs we actually gave to your cousin for her housewarming. Mm-hmm. It was like a really cool, like intricate
like a flourish
frame
design.
Yeah, kind of like a flourish design. And so I don't even remember what the thing said. I think it said something about like "let's eat" or whatever. And then I turned it into like it had a cool like house saying. And so I painted the frame, and then I think I actually painted the edging as well, and it looked really cool. And it would have cost me, I wouldn't have been able to recreate that, because that's not something I know that you can purchase. And it was like a pre-made sign, and I just added the words, so it was great.
That Target section, like when you first
dollar
walk
deals
in, like that section's really good for stuff like that. I have like so many like the Happy Halloween signs that people like hang on their doors that I would grab, because as long as it's flat, like you said, as long as it's something that like I don't have to like stand off or like that'll mess up the texture of like the front of the board. I'm like, I could use that. Put that in the cart.
And then the hoarding begins.
And then everybody knows how you can't leave Target with just what you came in there for.
Oh my God. So. You know, one thing that the pandemic has saved me from is Target and that dollar spot.
The dollar,
you can't get that online.
You can't get that online. Oh, it makes me so sad.
So this is kind of an extension, which I have this marked as a Heather hack, is tell them how you paint your frames and sometimes the backing for your signs with baby wipes.
With my baby wipes? Mm-hmm. It's not my idea, obviously. Anybody that has used it before knows that it's
like
been
a thing.
It's been around before I started using it, but it's very easy. The key with using the baby wipe hack, and I can link this in the group because I posted a tutorial, I think, on Gog. Yeah. Is making sure that the medium that you're mixing your, I guess, distress look with. So like what I do most is white with gray. So the key is making sure that the white paint is still wet when you're mixing the gray in, because otherwise it just looks like absolute crap. So I will usually do like a priming layer of white over the piece that I'm
you have like the base.
Using. Yeah, so that there's a base. I'll let that dry, and then I'll go over it one solid time with like a real thick, almost gross layer of white, just so I have a little bit more to play with. And then I just dunk my baby wipe in the gray stain and
it looks
just
really
wash
cool.
it back and forth. Yeah, it's kind of hard to envision when you haven't done it, because it sounds like it should be a mess, and like when you first start doing it
all over
it
your
does
hands
look like
stuff.
a mess. Yeah. And it even like with your first like swipe back and forth, you're like, this looks like crap. But then
I remember when you told me about it and you put out the
together.
video, and I was like, okay, let me try this. And I did this, and I was like, this is a terrible idea, because I'm like getting it everywhere. I'm getting it all over me. I'm not really like, I'm missing spots on the thing. It's already drying too fast.
But then once you start blending, you're like, oh, you can just dunk back and forth. So if there's too much gray, you can add some more white.
Right.
And then you can add some more gray.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I like that. Okay, that one's good. Yeah. Now let's do the next one.
And if you mess up, you can just paint. You literally, like, I've done times where, like, I've just painted the entire thing white again.
Right. Let me try again.
I'll be like, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to fill my wine up. And I'll be back. I'll be back for you.
So it was funny. Heather and I
not won.
Right. Heather and I, speaking of wine, Heather and I were talking about her wine filling. So she is usually like hiding up in the loft of her mansion,
right?
To record the podcast. And the first podcast, she only poured herself one glass of wine, and it wasn't enough. And so then she couldn't refill, because you know how she runs down the stairs.
Right.
And then back up. And so she couldn't, go down the stairs without like us knowing. Mm-hmm. And then of course
I didn't want to introduce myself to the public while I ran up the steps.
So this time, podcast hack: if you want wine for the full podcast, pour yourself 2 glasses.
Or just bring the bottle.
Well, yeah, but then you still have to pour it.
Well, no, Chris, going to sound like you gave me that cup. Mm-hmm. Crystal, you got me that cup.
That cup, I'm going to put that on the Riley Black project page.
That in the Riley Black.
Cup.
Then people can pour enough for the whole show.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to get me one of those cups for when I'm not pregnant anymore.
Is it the cup that fits the whole bottle?
Yeah, but it's one that fits.
I can mail you the second one back.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It did come with 2.
You gave me 2.
Oh, yes. So, it fits a whole bottle of wine.
It's called Big Betty, right?
I think so. Like it's called Big Betty.
But it's black. It is matte black. And it is glass, by the way.
And it doesn't have a stem.
To figure out if it was metal or glass.
It doesn't have a stem.
Stemless.
No, it's stemless. So you don't have to worry about
and
knocking
you can hold
it
in your hand. It's a little gigantic for a hand, but no one would ever guess
that it holds a whole bottle.
Right. I've already done it to people. Like I've walked up to people at my house and been like, guess how much is in here? Right. Like, I don't know. And I'm like, a full bottle of wine fits in here. Like,
and then they're all like impressed and then immediately a little bit judgy.
Like, thank God I have a funnel in my house, because I will dump the whole bottle. I'm like, look, see it fits. And then I just funnel it right back into the bottle.
Like, I'm not going to really drink this whole thing right now.
Yeah,
okay?
like I'm not really going to let this. But it not only fits a full bottle of wine, it fits 1,000 milliliters. So with a full bottle, there's still 250 milliliters of space at the top so that you don't spill.
That sounds like a challenge.
So that you don't spill.
It just sounds like more space.
I'm like, that's the challenge for me.
Right. So let's see. Checking on time. Let's probably share maybe like one or two more.
I think we forgot a main one that I use a lot and you use a lot.
What's that?
Pre-painting.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So I use nothing but chalk paints. I know Crystal used the spray paints and chalk paints.
Used to. Yeah.
Yeah. When we use wood, which we are now allergic to because we love acrylic.
I'm a total acrylic snob. I like when people ask me for things, especially like my friends and family who have ordered from me before. They're like, "Oh, I want one of these," and I'm like, "Can we try it in acrylic?" And they're like, okay. And they're like, or if not, then I'm like, man, I don't really use wood.
I don't really want this order.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's just, I mean, I don't really use it that much. And so like the wood that I do have is like buried. I don't have a ton of like range.
I use PG maple.
Yeah. I have a ton of maple.
I have a lot of Casey's wood, but I don't, like I just kind of have it on hand in case anyone asks.
Uh-huh. But
yeah,
we don't really want
anybody
them to
that
ask.
sees, but I don't want them to ask.
Yeah, but
why not? What's wrong with wood?
I don't know. Acrylic is just so. Acrylic is so nice because I guess this is kind of like a laser hack for the people who are scared of using acrylic again because of the price, kind of like 3M.
And the smell.
Acrylic, yeah, it does smell like a nail salon, and you do have to really have good venting because it will show you if you don't because it stinks.
Mm-hmm. Especially like if it's extruded or the duets line.
Right.
Ooh,
so
stinky.
Mirror acrylic is made with extruded acrylic, and it's stinkier just of the process of how it's made. And so like the normal like red, green, blue, that's cast acrylic. But anyway, the benefits of acrylic and why we've become kind of acrylic snobs is that you don't have to sand it. You don't have to paint it because you choose the color that you're gonna use. You don't have to seal it. You don't like all of the stuff that you don't have to stain it. Like
you do have to worry about flashback though. This is probably a good plug for the.
Oh yes, the next hack. That's a good one to end it on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
agreed. You can have that one.
No, you do it.
No, you do it. I'll do it.
But it's kind of like both of ours.
The paper towel one.
And the raising. Yours on scrap. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You raised yours.
My way to avoid flashback, which is the laser.
The only downfall of using acrylic.
Yes. So when the laser goes down and cuts through the acrylic, it will then reflect onto the bottom of the laser bed, and then it comes back up and it kind of like nicks your acrylic, and it'll leave these tiny little grooves of it coming down and back up.
Okay.
And so to avoid that, your settings will be the first step. Sometimes you can only get it so low that like you can only reduce your settings so much because then eventually it may not cut through because you've messed with your settings so much. So you get it as close as you can, and then to get rid of the rest of the flashback, one hack that I did was raising your material on scraps. So for like the Team Torian keychains, I used scrap from the first batch of like I made like 4 of them as testers. Well, then I had.
Or you can use like coins or
coins or
anything that'll lift it off the bed.
Anything that lifts it off the bed, like just like maybe about 1/4 inch, and I literally used 1/4 inch acrylic. I had little tiny squares as scrap. So you put a little small 1/4 inch square on each corner of my acrylic, and then when I cut it, that flashback didn't reach the acrylic anymore. And so it didn't leave that tiny little mark. And so it leaves an extra clean cut. And then things cut through because it falls. Mm-hmm. So if it didn't fall through, oh, okay, I'm going to go make another pass over that section because I know it didn't cut all the way through because it's still sitting there. Right, it didn't fall down. Mm-hmm. And so the other hack, again, for acrylic is the one Heather tried. You saw it from, was it Trotec?
Trotec.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that
Yeah,
one?
so Trotec put out an email. It was like I think it was the February like tips or whatever. It was a link to their YouTube video of laying a damp paper towel underneath of your
So great.
material. They said acrylic. I don't think we would do it under wood because there's not really
No.
concern there. But
Well, and I
laying it
wouldn't want to
under
get the wood
acrylic,
wet because it does
right,
get the masking a little bit
produces
wet.
like steam. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that laying the damp paper towel underneath of your sheet produces a little bit of a barrier and enough steam to stop the flashback of the beam flashback from actually coming back up onto your sheet. And the steam also almost like crystallized, like polishes the edge of your acrylic.
Great.
Oh, so pretty.
When you sent me that link, I was like, oh,
just watching
my...
that. We'll have to add a link to that.
Totally.
Just watching it in slow motion.
I watched it a few times. So when they showed the edge of that acrylic and how like smooth and shiny.
And they're like, this is only at 90 power on like a whatever. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I bought that sheet of acrylic just so I could just for that video. I have no reason for that at all. And I bought it just because Protect.
You did. It was so great though. It was like, that was, when you sent it to me, I'm pretty sure my response was the drooling emoticon.
It was. Yeah. Which was actually like, my face at that moment. Like I was like, oh.
It was such a gorgeous
like
cut.
The Homer Simpson gif where he's just staring at the screen.
Totally with the donut and said it's a acrylic keychain cutout.
Yeah.
Donuts.
Stop. I can't have donuts.
Donuts sound good.
Stupid baby.
I think that's been what I've added to this pod. Donuts.
Right? I know it's
so glad you're here, John.
Right? Thanks.
Just here for the donuts.
Thanks for tuning in. John will be here next week too.
It's been another great episode of the Rally Black with Heather and Crystal.
Heather and Crystal. Did you hear the tone in his voice?
Did he switch to my customer service voice?
Right? With Heather and Crystal. There was attitude in it though. Yeah, so then before we end, we have a ton more left over. So we'll do a part 2 and maybe a part 3 if we even need to. So if anybody has any that we didn't cover yet, they can leave suggestions on the Facebook page and we'll make sure to add those to the other, part 2, part 3, whatever. And then next week,
and let us know what you thought of the hacks.
Yeah, for sure. If you try any of them and how they work for you. But next week we have Amanda with Cerulean Tides.
Yeah.
And who I call my acrylic dealer. But she has some
also
exciting
my acrylic
news,
dealer.
right? Yeah. So it was funny because for the longest time, because she was a friend of mine, and I'm obsessed with how she's very particular about the quality of what leaves her shop. And so, like, when you get something from her, it's not going to have any gashes or scratches or, if it has any of that, it's immediately like what she calls a misfit. But anyway, so
misfit, yeah.
Only until recently did I actually, she had to actually tell me, like, you can order from people besides me. Like, it's okay. And I'm like, I know, but like, I feel guilty and I don't want to. And she's like, I'm like, but you don't have this one. She's like, exactly. She's like, you can order from other people
that's
besides me.
The only time we can betray.
Yeah. It's like, well, Amanda doesn't have this, so I can buy it. Because
she doesn't pressure us at all.
Not at all. She's never made us feel that way. Yeah. It's totally us doing that to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So she'll be on.
Oh my God, she's sitting at home right now looking at her orders like, oh God, she ordered from somewhere else.
Right. Like, I can't post this. She's going to know.
She ordered acrylic that I don't even offer from somebody else.
Right. How dare they? They aren't friends at all. So she'll be on, and she has some exciting news about something she's doing in the summer.
Oh. Yes.
And new,
so exciting.
Right? And new, I think she's always working on new acrylic, so I'm sure she'll tell us, like, what new stuff she has coming. And, yeah, so we'll have her next week. And then,
Sounds exciting.
yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. Can't
I'm
wait to hear what she's
excited.
got going on
I
in the
love
summer.
her.
Yeah, she's great. Tiny, 4'11",
Powerhouse.
totally a powerhouse.
Powerhouse.
She's great.
Yeah. With a heart of gold.
She is. She's the sweetest little thing.
Well, that's been another great episode of the Riley Black Project with Crystal and Heather.
Bye.
Bye, guys.